The Ultimate CU Learning Spaces project, TUCLES project, designed for maximum student engagement for face-to-face, online and hybrid learning. I'm Aziz Torofdar, project manager from AT Consultancy, responsible for the TUCLES project. The background to the project is that there is a need to create a new higher education facility for 10 classrooms consisting of two 300 student capacity lecture halls. As with any private sector organisation, the success of TUCLES project is reliant on a broad range of stakeholders. Different stakeholders have their own agenda. This has to be tackled effectively using a strong project stakeholder management strategy to increase the possibility of the successful delivery of the TUCLES project. Therefore, stakeholder analysis is vital and arguably more important than ever. As a result, an initial assessment of TUCLES project stakeholders is necessary. As for stakeholder engagement, it is a significant and dynamic issue and will also need to be undertaken. Stakeholders are the lifeblood of the project because they define whether the project will be successful or not. In short, stakeholder management can be broken down into 4 stages. Number 1, you need to identify stakeholders, after which you need to plan stakeholder engagement. And then you'd need to manage stakeholder engagement and finally monitor stakeholder engagement. In this short presentation, I will highlight key factors affecting stakeholder assessment and how they need to be effectively managed and engaged to ensure the success of the TUCLES project. There are many challenges to successful stakeholder management. Every stakeholder has their own context resulting from their culture and characteristics. Their ability to communicate, lead people to work collaboratively would impact how successfully a project manager can tackle the project. Therefore, with this understanding, I'll utilize a range of PM tools and frameworks to ensure the TUCLES project is managed successfully. A generally accepted definition of a stakeholder is any individual or group of individuals that are directly or indirectly impacted by an entity or a task. In other words, a stakeholder refers to any person, group, or organization who can be positively or negatively impacted by a proposed project or activities. Stakeholders fall into categories of internal and external, primary and secondary, positive and negative. However, what's important is that all stakeholders need to be identified and engaged. Initially, a list of possible stakeholders needs to be made. A set of relevant questions can then be asked to identify the stakeholders of the TUCLES project. The full list is as shown. List of all possible stakeholders would include who the primary customers are, who are the secondary customers, and we mean stakeholders. Next, all the functions that would influence the project would need to be identified. It is necessary to identify all the expected functions that will influence or impact the TUCLES project. Also, it's important to identify the individual in each function with whom a conversation about their specific interests needs to take place. After that, a decision would need to be made as to what information would be needed for each stakeholder and how to acquire it. Having identified a list of stakeholders, then it will be necessary to ask some key questions, including who we need to know about, what we need to know about each stakeholder, where and how can information on each stakeholder be gathered. Having made the crucial decision of the required information, it will be necessary to actually gather the information. And gathering the information would require a further set of questions, as can be seen. At this point of the process, each stakeholder would need to be asked 4 key questions, as shown. And these include, are they needed to provide resources? Are they directly affected by the work? And so on. And at the near final stage, each stakeholder would be allocated a clearly defined role: decision maker, player, observer, or consent giver. Decision maker. This stakeholder is required to make key decisions. Player. The stakeholder is required to play a part in the program or project. Observer. This stakeholder may observe what is happening in the project. Consent giver. This stakeholder is required to consent to decisions made. And finally, each stakeholder would be scored as positive or negative, or 0 to indicate positive, negative, or neutral towards the project. Initially, my ultimate objective would be to focus on managing stakeholders who are identified as negative and don't know. I would then take action to turn everyone to positive or at least neutral using my negotiating and influencing skills. This will be further discussed later on in the presentation. Following a thorough process as outlined earlier, it will be possible to identify the stakeholders of the TUCOS project. Stakeholders can be categorized into internal versus external, primary versus secondary, and positive versus negative. Broadly speaking, they can be divided into two categories, internal and external. Here are the TUCOS stakeholders as can be seen. It is expected that for the TUCOS project, a stakeholder register is kept. This is an important project management document which would be used to capture stakeholders' information. The key information to be captured includes stakeholder name, their title, role, etc. It is important that Coventry University keeps the register and all the other information in accordance with the GDPR privacy and confidentiality requirements. As you can see, here is a detailed stakeholder register for the TUCOS project. I've compiled this using the PM techniques and principles based on my research and as discussed earlier. Communication is the process by which we assign and convey meaning to create shared understanding between stakeholders. And the more stakeholders that are involved, the more complex the communication process becomes. It is necessary to create an effective communication plan which will support the process of stakeholder management. The need to consider the level of engagement in relation to communication when deciding the approach to engagement. This is vital. The diagram clearly shows the key factors that need considering. According to APM, stakeholder engagement refers to the systematic identification, analysis, planning, and implementation of actions designed to influence stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement is important. By using the stakeholder engagement process, Coventry University can communicate and get to know their stakeholders and take the necessary actions in order to make the TUCOS project a success. And as can be seen, there are a number of good reasons why stakeholder engagement is important. There are a number of different strategies that can be deployed to effectively engage stakeholders. These include surveying stakeholders, prioritizing stakeholders, etc. As CU is a large organization, it is believed that the interest versus influence strategy is the most relevant, which is what I've used for this process. It is believed that this can help segment and enable engagement. For example, if a stakeholder is less interested in being involved, then it's appropriate to limit the level of communication with them. However, if a particular stakeholder has a lot of influence, then it would be appropriate to be more personal with them to bring their input into the process. Depending on where on the chart the stakeholder lies, the management of the stakeholder can be defined as shown. Stakeholders with low power and low interest are minor stakeholders. Stakeholders with high power and low interest have a disproportionately high amount of influence. Stakeholders with low power and high interest are not in a position to influence. Stakeholders with high power and high interest are major stakeholders. There are a range of methods that can be used to engage stakeholders. Therefore, for the TUCOS project, the following methods can be deployed: bulletin and letters, brochures, phone calls, emails, etc. In summary, for the TUCOS project to be successful, I recommend the 10 key principles and actions as stated by APM, shown here. Among these recommendations, you have communication, consultation, planning, relationship building, and so on. These are absolutely vital in order for the successful completion and implementation of this project. To recap, it's important to recall that the stakeholder engagement process involves planning, preparing, acting, reviewing, and improving. Project managers depend on stakeholders to respond productively, and they will only do so if they are engaged. Therefore, I make the above recommendations in order to ensure the TUCOS project is completed successfully. Stakeholders can't be managed as the PM often does not have any formal power or authority. Therefore, it is vital to engage the stakeholders and use a range of skills and strategies including leadership and team working skills, as well as PM frameworks as stated and recommended in this video presentation. This would ensure that the Coventry University TACOS project is successfully delivered. Thanks for watching. Here you can see a list of references used for this project in order to ensure that the findings are rigorous and in accordance with academic research